Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. I'm happy to be here for this special event. And I'm going to start by holding a bit of a talk about the New Year hiatus. First of all, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dharmananda. I have been teaching yoga and Tantra for almost 20 years. I happen to be also the brother of Somananda, which maybe some of you know better. I have been practicing for years, especially during the time of the New Year, this type of meditations, exactly which we are going to hold. And I can definitely say that they can bring a lot of change into your spiritual evolution. So let's see what can be said about the New Year hiatus. And first of all, about the concept of hiatus. What is so special about the hiatus, and especially the New Year hiatus, which we focus on today, and what doing a meditation during this time can bring us and can help us in our spiritual transformation and evolution. So generally, the concept of hiatus is considered to be a big study in Tantra. You remember, those of you who have attended some of our courses in our school, that whenever we mention the word Tantra, we actually speak about energy, that everything in Tantra starts and ends with energy. The more you bring yourself to understand energy, the more you can actually learn how to control your fate and your destiny, and you don't necessarily have to be subjected to all kind of events or scenarios in your life in which you don't have control. You can actually start taking control by studying and understanding energy. So hiatus is a big study in Tantra. It signifies a deep understanding of time and the structure of the universe. And when through special meditation, the yogi learns how to access it and can effect change for the future and access great energy. In the hiatus, which today we are encountering a big hiatus, we can speak about hiatuses which are more, on a small scale, on a small level. When I say hiatus, I can say instead of the word hiatus, a gap or a break or interruption of some sort. Like, for example, when we take our heartbeats, then our heart keeps on beating, and then between one heartbeat to the other, there is a small break, which can be also described as a hiatus, or we can speak about a gap between one thought to the next thought. But of course, the story goes much more than that. We don't have the time to elaborate on this in this introduction, but we know that especially during the time of the New Year, there is a very major, a big hiatus which occurs. It happens during the New Year, and it reflects basically a moment of change. On what is so special about the hiatus in the New Year? What is so special is that during the time of the New Year, people's consciousness is synchronized. Try to think about it. During the whole year, you cannot find one single moment in which all people's consciousness is synchronized and it is united into one direction, which is positive. But during the time of the New Year, people are all having this kind of thought of wishing something positive, of wishing something great for the next year. You'd never find people will say something, oh, you know what, I wish the next year, this year is going to be truly horrible, or that this year is going to be really bad or something. Everybody will wish for a great year, for some wonderful things to happen. And it is something which is happening collectively. Of course, there are different time zones which you can speak of, but nevertheless, during a period of 24 hours or so, which we are still in at the moment, we are still riding on this wave of collective thinking, then we have this synchronized consciousness in which human beings are wishing for something good. And it's like collective amount of minds is actually united in one positive direction. And we in yoga, we have the advantage to learn how to control and attune this level of consciousness and to actually bring out of it the best, because we can, for example, join together and just celebrate New Year just like any other person do by drinking a glass of wine and having a party of some sort. Or we can do something much, much more constructive from a spiritual perspective, and that is meditation. That we can meditate, and by meditating on this specific hayatus, which represents this kind of transition between one year to the other. It's a hayatus which everybody's mind is synchronized, and by meditating as a group, we can actually create a change for the next year, because this hiatus is like a crossroad. When a hiatus occurs, and a major one like this New Year, it's like a crossroad. It's like a magical moment in which you have the opportunity to bring the reality in according to what you want in your life. Whatever it is that you wish or you desire for the next year in your life. And of course, the best would be something more spiritual, because somebody will say, well, I just want to win the lottery and gain whatever $1 million or something. It's not necessarily going to make you more content. It's not necessarily going to make you more spiritual, detached, loving, and so on. So we obviously want to attune our attention to something more spiritual, something more constructive. And in this New Year hiatus, we have the opportunity to open this magical door, and via meditation, via focusing our attention and our intentions, we can make it happen. We can turn it into reality with the power of our mind, with the power of our consciousness. And that's the great power and magic of meditation, of Tantra, of using energy and our mind. If we try to go a little bit more into the practical level, because soon we are going to do a meditation together with Somananda riding on this hiatus. And the question is, what should you do with your mind, or what should you set as an intention for the next year? So I'm going to give a few examples as to what would be the best to focus on when you are meditating and you're focusing on what you hope to bring into your life in the next year. The best would be, again, to make the next year, 2023, the most spiritual year ever. And let me give you a few practical recommendations. One practical recommendation would be what is called in yoga the concept of tapasya or tapas. Concept of tapas is something which we elaborate much more in our Tantra yoga courses in level 1. So the concept of tapas says that if you want to make a change in your life, you need to make a conscious decision to become spiritual. And to make this conscious decision, you need to take a certain kind of a spiritual practice commitment. When you read about the lives of great saints or great yogis, question, how do you think they became enlightened? How did they become holy and sacred? Did they do it just by, lying down on the grass and looking at the sky, and then suddenly, poof, the cosmic consciousness simply poked its finger into their being, into their aura, and then something happened and they became enlightened? Very rarely it manifested in such a way. When you read the life about great yogis, great saints, both men and women, you see that many of them, they have reached their spiritual accomplishments by applying a lot of spiritual effort, which means that every day for a certain amount of time, they took this kind of conscious decision, a conscious commitment to do practice every day, whichever it was. Some of them were doing more prayer, others were doing more meditation, others were doing more hatha yoga, and so on. But they took this kind of a commitment that every day they went into their yoga mat, or they went into the room and they sat and they disconnected from anything that could distract them, and they focused some more, and they did their practice. And like this every day, they were growing spiritually. So this concept of tapas is a concept which is a little bit confusing for people in modern time, because in modern time we are used to always, living a kind of a door open to escape. Like if I'm in a situation or am I in a time in my life which I feel like I just want to take it easy and I don't want to commit myself to anything, then it's very easy to say, you know what, I didn't commit to anything, so I'm just going to go away and just take a vacation or just, relax. And I don't want to exert any kind of effort on any level, physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. But the concept of tapas from yoga says there is no running away from it. If you don't want to grow spiritually, then of course, you don't need to practice tapas. You don't need to make effort. But if you do have the sincere intention to grow spiritually, whatever it is, to become better mentally, to have better mental concentration, to be more centered, to learn how to control your emotions, to learn how to control your sexual energy, to learn how to cultivate unconditional love, to have more willpower, dynamism, and many other qualities, why not, to become spiritually enlightened. If you want to reach those, then you need to make some kind of a spiritual effort. So one good intention during the performance of a New Year Hiatus meditation for the year to come is to kind of set a tapas for the next year. And of course, it can be different individually because each and every one of you is different from each other. You are facing different obstacles, different problems, issues in your life. But for sure, you would like to grow, you would like to change, you would like to become better, stronger, more spiritual, and so on. But it's not going to happen just like this. So you need to apply some kind of an effort. You need to take and choose a certain kind of tapas. And then by practicing this tapas, the whole idea of tapas says that once you've taken this commitment, you have to complete it till the end. If I say my tapas for the next year is that for 6 months, every day for half an hour, I'm going to practice meditation, there is no way of turning back. You have to do it every day for half an hour for 6 months. Even if there suddenly comes a day and I don't know what happens, there is an announcement of some war that is emerging or some other tragic news, according to the concept of tapas, you have to fulfill your tapas. And the more you practice this tapas, this commitment, the more you grow willpower and the more you grow spiritually. So we can give all kinds of examples of tapas. I mentioned already meditation. You can take the tapas of practicing hatha yoga every day. Either it is for half an hour or 3 hours. I know some of you have families, obligations, and so on. And maybe the whole amount of free time that you have during the day is just half an hour. But even this half an hour can be converted to something very efficiently and strong spiritually. Some people will say, well, half an hour is not a lot of time. Yes, but try to think about it in the following way. If during this half an hour, you would do your yoga practice like crazy, like mad, like you have shivers, goosebumps all over your body, like maybe you have seen some images of some Christian mystics or some other saints that when they were praying, they were doing it with a lot of enthusiasm, with a lot of aspiration. So even if you have only half an hour of time during the day, but you put all your energy into this direction, it can become much more powerful compared to another person which has 8 hours of free time per day. But during this 8 hours, he's doing things very flat. He's doing things without much enthusiasm in a very dry way. And then the evolution is very small. So it's all in the mind. It's all in the attitude of how do you approach your practice, of how do you approach the goal that you wish to accomplish. Setting a tapas, setting a kind of a spiritual commitment for the next year would be a good idea to focus on during this meditation. I can give other examples, such a very important topic, which definitely concerns a lot of beginners in their spiritual practice, would be the topic of purification. That we today are living in an environment which is very impure, starting from the food that we eat, which is filled with impurities, not to mention going to the fact that a lot of people either are smoking or drinking alcohol or taking drugs going to the fact that many of you are living in cities in which you have pollution, 5G, and whatever else that might bring more impurities into your aura. And in Tantra, in spirituality, it all again starts and ends with energy. And the energy, as it passes through your system, it passes through what is called in yoga nadis, or channels of energies. If you are doing yoga, if you are doing tantric lovemaking or something like this, you want to feel the energy moving, because the mind or consciousness follows energy. So if the energy is circulating in your body, and let's say it is going up to the top of your head, you can actually become enlightened. You can go into ecstatic state. You can go into a state of bliss, and that can be something mind-blowing. But for that to happen, the energy needs to flow without any interruption, without any obstacles. And if your nadis, if your channels of energies are blocked or they are plugged, you will try to do something, but you will feel that it is stuck, that the energy is not flowing properly. And that goes back again to the fact that you may have impurities in your system. So in order to purify yourself, in order to pave for the energy to pass accordingly into your system, you need to apply purification. And here, that can be another idea that you can focus on for the year to come. Either it is taking a decision to take a certain diet. Again, maybe it can be in the form of a tapas. You can say, I'm going to do a certain diet for the next 3 months of my life because I want to purify myself. Or maybe it's just doing some more direct purification, like some form of a detox, which is something which is recommended to most people today, especially because of the factors which I mentioned earlier, which cause and bring impurities into people's structure. So purification can be a goal, especially if you are having a background which is very impure, especially if you are coming from a background, and we're not judging anyone. You had the life that you had up until now, but still you can correct some of the things that you have done by applying purification. We can mention other forms of practice which would be recommended to boost your spiritual evolution, such as, for example, the power of Tantric meditation. By the way, I mentioned purification, and we can speak about all kinds of diets and detox methods and so on, which are purifying more a human being on the lower levels, but it might not necessarily purify the emotions and the mind, because the truth is that most people today on this planet, they have a lot of subtle impurities which are more manifesting at the level of the mind and the emotions. And this is something which you definitely pick up much more from the environment around you, because today we are bombarded by all kinds of movies, TV shows, commercials, all kinds of other things which are coming to us from the media via our smartphones, computers, television sets, and so on. And they can bring a lot of fear. They can bring a lot of anxiety. They can bring a lot of frustration, agitation, confusion, and so on. You can just have a look at what happened in the world in the last 3 years with this pandemic, in which people were simply freaking out and they didn't know what to do because their mind and their emotions were simply going ballistic. And that can go to a very tragic level, in which some people might take the consideration of committing suicide or something like this, just because their mind is filled with impurities. So how to eliminate such subtle impurities? The yogis from the old days, they knew very well the method. And the method is the practice of meditation, sitting, closing your eyes, and confronting your own mind, confronting your own inner demons, which are actually just a product of some impurities which you have absorbed in your subconscious mind. And in Tantra, there is a big advantage in meditation, because we're not just practicing any kind of meditation, but we're practicing Tantric meditation, a meditation which is based more on the use of energy, the sublimation of the lower energies and the lower emotions, which can be more like a kind of a shortcut and can take you into high states of consciousness pretty fast, and at the same time also eliminate a lot of impurities which exist in your mind. So you can say, you know what, my intention for the next year would be to add more tantric meditation into my life. The practice of meditation can be amazing. Some people think, oh, meditation is just this kind of practice to make one more relaxed and to reduce blood pressure and so on. But there is much, much, much more to the practice of meditation. The practice of meditation done in a proper way, based on the concentration of the mind, can change so many things in your life. It can change the quality of your relationship. It can change the way that you generally feel during the day. It can change your level of consciousness. But to accomplish this, you need to start from this kind of action, which for a lot of people can be quite demanding. And that sitting down, closing your eyes, either being in silence or using some music. But the whole point is that you should interiorize and you should not be distracted by any other activities around you, which can be a very difficult task for most people these days, simply because of the world which we are living today, which is filled with agitations, temptations, and a lot of activities which make our mind very impure and very agitated and confused. If it is not about meditation, then there are other things which you can focus on for the next year. Some people might say, you know what, I want the next year to be the year of the heart. I want to dive deep into my heart chakra. As we see challenges globally are rising, the answer to many of these challenges could be actually coming from the heart, from your anahata chakra. Because when you look around you today in this world, when you look at people, when you look at the media, what do you see? You see that people are reacting with a lot of anger, with a lot of stress, fear, and worry. And these usually come from where? It comes eventually from the ego. From the standpoint of the 7 chakras, which we analyze in our beginner courses in Tantra, we say the seat of the ego in the human being is at the level of the 3rd chakra, is Manipura chakra. When you are centered and focused in your ego, then it's all about me, 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 me. And then of course, there can be a lot of fear, there can be a lot of anger, there can be a lot of stress, because when it's all about me, you think about, but what is going to happen with the world? What is going to happen with my money? I don't like this person, I don't like this situation. Try to see what is happening with the social media. People are angry at each other, being disrespectful to each other, and so on. And it's not showing that these people are coming from the heart, that these people have anahata chakra, because if you would have a heart chakra, that means that you have transcended your ego. And if you have transcended your ego, you're not so focused about me, me, me. And even if somebody is whatever sending you some nasty message on social media or so on, you're not going to react in a childish way, but you can learn how to cultivate qualities which are more higher, much more spiritual, such as inner peace, love, tranquility, and gratitude. So this is simply a matter of self-introspection. Like, try to look back at the year which just ended or the years before that. Were you acting more from the level of the ego? Is it possible that many of the issues and problems and obstacles that you encounter in your life are coming actually because you are very much at the level of the ego? And then if the answer is yes, maybe it would be a good time to make this kind of leap, to make this kind of change and go to the level of the heart, go to the level of anahata chakra. It can be very challenging because even when you study the 7 chakras in Tantra, you notice something very interesting, that the largest distance between one chakra to the one above it is between Manipura to Anahata, between the 3rd and the 4th chakra. And it's not a coincidence that it's such a big distance, because this is perhaps the most challenging leap of consciousness for most human beings on this planet, to transcend the ego and go to the level of the heart, where you can forgive, when you can maybe start by forgiving yourself, because some people all the time, whether they are aware of it or not, they keep on blaming themselves and blaming others. And this is coming again from having too much and building too much frustration at the level of Manipura chakra. By creating one of these mindsets, which I've mentioned, you're actually not allowing the world determine yours. A lot of people keep on blaming, the world and saying, this is the government's fault, this is this person's fault, this is this politician's fault, and so on. But actually, you can change your reality by changing yourself, by changing your own internal content, by doing your meditation, by opening your heart chakra, by doing purification, and some of the other things which we mentioned. And of course, perhaps the highest thing that you can thrive to accomplish in the year to come from a spiritual perspective is the cultivation of your relationship with the divine as a true and fulfilling relationship. What does it mean to cultivate your relationship with the divine? Some people might even say, I am an atheistic. I don't believe in God. I don't believe that there is a supreme consciousness. Okay, maybe you are an atheistic and maybe you don't believe in God. But then some yogis would say, but even if you are an atheistic, still, you would definitely very much like to know the truth with a capital T. Like, what is the nature of this reality? How did I come to this world? What will happen with my soul after I'm going to die? So that can be also a source of aspiration, even though you're an atheist, to build such a relationship. Either you will call it God, divine consciousness, your higher self, the universe, call it whatever you want. It's definitely something which can build your spiritual skeleton and can make things change in a drastic level for the benefit of your spiritual transformation and evolution. So how to cultivate this relationship with the divine? Well, one very simple way would be to read spiritual texts regularly every day. Like, you take a spiritual text, and of course, we're speaking here about authentic spiritual texts. You don't want to just go to some new age library and just pick a book of some amateur speaking about God or speaking about reincarnation or something like this. You want something authentic. So that's why it's good to insist on fundamental yogic texts, fundamental spiritual texts, or texts which have been written by authentic yogis, like yogis which have been verified to have reached enlightenment, such as Paramahamsa Yogananda, Swami Shivananda, some of the examples from recent history on the 20th century. And we can go very much more far in history. Why not the sayings of Jesus, Buddha, and so on? By reading such texts, it puts you telepathically, it attunes you to a level of consciousness which was super spiritual. And by attuning to such a level of resonance, it can change your whole life. It can change your whole day, because it's something which works on a very deep level. Some people will say, I don't have time to do yoga practice. I don't have time to do meditation. I don't have the time to do this or that. But you can always find even 5 minutes in your very busy schedule, even if it's just 5 minutes before you go to bed, to just read a little bit, even if it's just a chapter, even if it's just a few paragraphs of some spiritual sayings. And this is something which can make the whole difference, because this is what nourishes your soul. This is what can make the injection in your soul, in which it can keeps you moving on to the next day, to the next month, until maybe you will have more time to do practice. And then you feel like, even though you're in the chaos of your life and there's pandemics and there's all kind of bad things are happening and you have 2 jobs and so on, still there is something intimate. There is some kind of connection between you to something very special, which keeps you moving in the right direction. So reading spiritual texts is important, and of course following all the other elements which we mentioned before: practicing hatha yoga, practicing tantric sexuality, practicing meditation, doing purification, diet, reading spiritual texts, and any other spiritual activities which you consider to be beneficial for you, as long as of course they're not going into the negative direction, will be definitely making this relationship between you and the divine stronger and stronger. So these are some of the things that we are going to focus on today in this new year hiatus meditation, because there is this special energy that we are at the moment, because there is this kind of a transition between one year to the other, then we have a certain kind of opportunity, a certain kind of a gateway, which allows us to put our mindset, our intention, each and every one of you individually, on whatever it is that you think is the most important for you to accomplish in the year to come. And because there is this magical energy, it will happen. It will manifest. You can make it happen, and you can change your life. So that's why it's very valuable and important to use this special opportunity for your benefit.